We are discussing the campaign for mayor of the city of Chicago. We've got guests who are going to share their thoughts and opinions in just a moment. But again, the other evening, Telemundo, NBC5 came out with the latest poll on how things are looking in the primary. And this is what they came up with. Undecided. This is very surprising with a little over a week to go. Undecided way up there at 19% in first place, followed by Toni Preckwinkle, who's the president of the Cook County Board. She's at 14%. Bill Daley, who recently received the Tribune endorsement and $1 million donation, at 13%. Susana Mendoza, who's been in there from the get-go, just a point behind at 12%, and rounding out those with at least a double digit, Lori Lightfoot, who a couple of weeks ago received the endorsement of the Chicago Sun-Times. In the next group, we have Gary Chico, who's just barely, he's at 9%, Amara Enya at 7%, Jerry Joyce, 4%, Willie Wilson at 4%, and then those pulling up the rear, Gary McCarthy, the former police superintendent, at 3%, Paul Vallis, the former head of the school superintendent of schools, who was one of the first in the race, only at 2%, Bob Fioretti at 1%, LaShawn Ford at 1%, Neil Sayes Griffin at 1%, and John Kozlar is really at 0, or actually not even showing up anywhere. So that's the way things stand right now. Shia Kappas, thank you very much for being with us. You are with Politico. You write the Illinois Playbook. It's the first thing I read in the morning, and if you love politics, I think I speak for a lot of people. But at this moment in time, is there anyone that has momentum in your view?
2 days ago, I think we thought Bill Daley had momentum because he received that Tribune endorsement. And there's a debate about whether you think newspaper endorsements matter or not. In a race like this, maybe even it does, just a little, it might be a little 0.5%. In a race like this, I think that might matter. We thought he had a lot of momentum. It looks like the poll was taken about the same time that he received that endorsement, so I don't know yet whether that affected him or not.
Romaine Hartman also joins us. She is the publisher of Indigo. She's been around covering politics for a long, long time. You are supporting Bill Daley. We should say that for the audience, but put your reporter hat on. Is there anyone that you think has momentum, and what can you tell us about what you think is happening in the African American community?
So, Mr. Undecided is the winner right now.
Right.
And of Mr. Undecided, that is African American and Latino votes. Okay, so right now, everybody needs to target that vote. Lori Lightfoot has gained significantly after the Sun-Times endorsement. Toni is flat, Preckwinkle is flat, and I think Daley is flat, and it is his to gain. Okay, Willie Wilson, I don't believe the poll on Willie Wilson.
You don't believe that he's only at 4%?
No, I don't. Now, if that's true, he's dropped.
Yes, it is.
He's dropped significantly.
Let's go to.
I mean, that's if we're studying polls, that's kind of the order of the day.
Right. Nick Com, you are an observer. Your reputation management is what you're involved in. But as you're observing this race, do you sense any momentum for anybody?
Well, I think the moment.
And you're not for anybody. You're
no,
not.
Correct.
You're not.
Yep. I'm neutral on this one. I think with 19% undecided, when people decide to go into the ballot box, assuming there isn't a wild card between now and Election Day from, say, the Department of Justice, I think people are going to go in, and people who may not necessarily be up to speed on what's going on may look at the ballot and go, oh, Daley, yeah, that name. I know that name. I'm going to vote for that guy, not necessarily knowing that it isn't the same Daley that they're used to.
Or they might go Daley.
Yeah,
or they might, yeah.
Or they could go that way.
It's a
Dan
double-edged
Malopoulos
sword.
also joins us. Dan, nice to have you with us. I hope I
pleasure.
haven't butchered your name.
Not at
You're
all.
with WBEZ Radio. You've been with the Sun-Times, the Tribune. You've been covering politics for a long, long time in this city. So you probably have your ear closest to the ground of those at the table. Do you think there's momentum anywhere?
No, I think we're looking at a situation here where potentially the two people that make the runoff, neither of which may break 20%. You could see a situation where you have close to a dozen people who drop out and who are eliminated. Then they combined have the lion's share of the vote on February the 26th.
If that happens, it's always interesting when you've got a multiple candidate field. Who has said things during the campaign that have really ticked off someone else, and if that person gets in the runoff, now they've got to kiss and make up. Is there any real hatred or vitriol that we've seen in this campaign?
I think there's a lot of vitriol between Tony Preckwinkle's campaign and Susana Mendoza's campaign.
Okay. And now Susanna and Daley, that's picked up as well.
And Susana and Daley, too, yes. Partly because they're neck and neck. That's the nature of what happens when you're neck and neck. You really start to butt heads. And they differ on a lot of positions, so I imagine we'll just be seeing more of that.
Mm-hmm. And insofar as the African American, would you agree with Hermaine that maybe at least the poll showing Willie Wilson at 4% may be sort of an undercount of where he might really be?
Well, that's possible, although it wouldn't be much less than he got the last time that he ran for mayor. But that's certainly possible. We've seen other polls definitely that have him ahead of Tony Preckwinkle in the African American community. So what we'll see on February the 26th, I don't know. But yes, if he's at 4%, he's below even where he was, I think, 4 years ago, and below where he is in other polls that show him maybe benefiting from increased recognition in the African American community, since it's not his first time running.
Yeah, and paying these property taxes. I mean, he's made that to me one of the most effective, campaign spots that I've seen so far. And he's basically putting his money where his mouth is, even though some people think that's buying votes.
Well, I don't say
and we
anybody's
certainly don't do that in Chicago.
No, we don't accuse anybody of a crime until they are charged, like Ed Burke was. So let's just leave it at that.
But keep in mind, that's not new for him. Okay, that's something
Right.
that he's been doing. That's not a campaign trick. That's not a buy vote trick. He's been doing that. He's done that for at least the last 10 years.
But it is convenient that he timed it.
Well, it's
the week before
timely,
the
but
election, too.
it's not new.
And
Those are due now.
the extent that Lori, you mentioned Lori Lightfoot's endorsement by the Sun-Times, you said there was certainly a bump. I think there's been a financial bump to her, and obviously the polls suggest she's at least double digits right now. Mm-hmm. Is the battle at that level? Is it between she and Amara Enya? Are they fighting for the same voter?
No, I don't think so.
You don't think so?
No, I think Amanya's fighting for a millennium vote. And I think the stories that have come out about her poor financial handling of personal matters, I think that has been a real detriment to her.
It is interesting because this could be one of the elections where a progressive insurgent like Amara could have taken off, but for the issues that have been revealed about her own financial issues, that's why she stalled despite the Chance the Rapper, despite the Kanye West support.
Took her
But
down.
many years ago in 1983, Harold Washington had charges leveled against him about income tax and laxity in covering his financial responsibilities.
Different day,
It didn't-
different
didn't it?
politician.
Yeah.
Didn't
She's no
hurt him
Harold
at all.
Washington. I
She's
wasn't
no
saying
Harold
that.
Washington, please.
We're talking about Chicago politics. I'm Bruce Dumont. Thanks for joining us.
When you find out that they are real, that all changes, you see. Vampirism is deadly contagious. Goodman Theatre presents Conor McPherson's St. Nicholas, starring Brendan Coyle from Downton Abbey and Mary Queen of Scots, straight from London's Donmar Warehouse, in a performance critics call spellbinding, stellar, and a vicious delight. For a limited time only at Goodman Theatre, you might just have a wicked good time.
Live from Chicago, it's Saturday Night Live, The Experience. For the first time ever, get an inside look at the making of SNL. Over 500 artifacts direct from the show. Be a part of Wayne's World, Weekend Update, and so much more. Experience all it takes to put the show together. Now at the Museum of Broadcast Communications at 360 North State Street in Chicago. For tickets, visit museum.tv.
A line is a powerful thing. It connects the global economy to your living room. Cleaner air, to stronger markets, factory floors to less crowded roads. Today's progress to tomorrow's promise. Norfolk Southern. One line, infinite possibilities.
Bruce Dumont back talking Chicago politics. I asked before whether anyone has momentum. Have you picked up any excitement? I mean, real excitement for anybody? Dan, I want to ask you.
Yeah, I don't see anything similar to what happened before one Senate primary where I heard people on the L talking about, this cat Barack Obama. And you start hearing that and you're like, well, maybe something's going on here. And that's what launched him, right, into the stratosphere and ultimately to the White House. I don't know that I see that yet in this race. I think a lot of people are, as the poll show, undecideds in first place.
Right.
Sheila, what
right.
about you? You've been
I
around
think the
covering
same
politics
thing.
for a long time.
Yeah, I think initially when Chance the Rapper got in for Amara, there was a little bit of buzz, but I feel like that's kind of dissipated. I've heard young people talk about Susana Mendoza, but I don't know that I've seen that. This was, just a little bit anecdotal. And I do think there's, in the business world way, you could say there's a little bit of excitement that way, as much as business people can get excited. For Bill Daley, it looks like.
He's got
more
what,
donations.
$6 million, and so someone is they're excited when they're writing a check, or at least.
Though when you do look at
Work to
those
be.
donations to Bill Daley, a lot of them are from out of state. So we say the business community is interested, but it's his friends from when he worked in Texas or Washington D.C.
So I think some of the excitement came from the rest, probably negative excitement, but I think the Burke incident had an influence on the campaign, multiple candidates.
Has Tony been hurt the most? I go back to your first comment that, Tony Preckwinkle is basically where she was 3 weeks ago.
Right.
Is she stalled because of the Burke taint?
It hurt her.
Well, I think
That hurt her, and also the reputation with the She Needed You, Nick, with the sugar tax. I think that is looming. That is just looming. What bothers
no one's used it in a spot.
they don't have to. It's looming in the voter's eye, and I think with with that mentality, I think that's what's really the problem. If we're going to if your solution to raising the coffers is to put tax on pop, then are we going to tax meat and bread and butter? I mean, that's looming, and people are talking about that.
she is the front runner, obviously, but by very narrow margins. But she has the feeling, the vibe that she gives off is that she's basically being propped up by the Democratic machine as the chair of the party as
And the union.
and the unions, and that there is really no real excitement for her. She may probably be across the finish line in terms of the runoff, but it's the antithesis of enthusiasm. I think there
have been some candidates who've referenced the soda tax, but I'm
Pico
kind
has
of
in some of his
I'm
ads.
kind of surprised that there isn't somebody out there beating her over the head on that subject.
But some of
because-
them might want to be in the runoff
Yeah.
with her and then use it. And I think that she may come to regret not running in 2015, where I think her favorables were a little bit higher. And maybe she could have beaten Rahm Emanuel. Probably didn't want to get into it with a guy that could raise and did raise and spend, $30 million. But I think that a lot of her supporters thought it would be easier for her, given that she has done well at the polls county-wide in the suburbs as well, but especially in the city. And I think she had a broad popularity across racial lines, and I think it's dissipated a lot because of the pop tax, because of Burke. I think she took a lot of water on her campaign with that, and maybe has sort of come back. Had that happened a little bit closer to the election, I think it could have been really, really
But
detrimental.
Bruce, here's another thing with Tony,
ahead.
is are you progressive or are you machine? And I think there's a lot of confusion in the marketplace on what are you and who are you. She's not clearly defined anymore.
What if you're conservative. Now, the Chicago Republican Party, they've endorsed Willie Wilson. And, Kristen McQuarrie over at the Tribune, even though the Tribune endorsed Bill Daley, she does this big, column on that Wilson may be more Republican than anybody.
So
Now,
how
there's
did-
a lot of
Both
Republican
letters, or
votes,
whatever.
though.
How did
Yeah.
that happen?
But that's the kiss of death. I think an official endorsement from the Republican Party in Cook County, that's the kiss of death. However, I think it's a little bit what Shia was talking about as well. Despite the fact that the money is coming from out of state, business has to glom onto somebody. And I think the business community has glommed onto Daley because so many of the other candidates that are doing well.
I
And
would say-
Preckwinkle, right?
I would
mean,
say-
if Preckwinkle loses, she's still going to be the president of the county board.
Right.
I think there are a lot of business people who have held back, though. They're still waiting, just maybe like those independent or those voters who we don't know where they're going yet. They're still waiting to see who is going to get in the runoff because they just don't. They don't want to put their money where their mouth is, I guess, quite yet.
They don't believe in early money.
They don't believe
Even
in
though
early money.
politicians like people that give early money.
Well, some people are doing the opposite and spreading it around to 4 or 5 candidates.
Right.
The charter
Hedging their
school
bets,
people
yeah.
are giving
Right.
to multiple candidates, to
hedging their
Chico, to
bets, yeah.
Mendoza, to hedge their bets, or to, because they want anybody but Tony.
Right.
But the other thing is, you've got a lot of people out here who are waiting for the runoff. It's like we won't participate in the primary, but we'll be there for the general.
Right. What does everybody think of the endorsement of Bill Daley by the Chicago Tribune?
They had nowhere to
Surprised?
go. No, that wasn't surprise. It was very predictable. Tribune will endorse Daley, and today Crane, Chicago, endorsed Daley. Who else are they going to endorse?
That's it. Yeah, it's back to what I was saying before about the business community. Who else are they? They're not, I don't think they're going to support Preckwinkle. She's in bed with the unions. They know that. The business community knows that. They realize that if she wins the runoff or the election overall, that they're going to have a hell of a hard time, certainly compared to what they've had the last 8 years.
Did the endorsement surprise you, Shia?
The Crane's endorsement did not because he's from the business community, so of course the business magazine would support him. The Tribunes, I thought they might get a little bit more creative. Why not go for a Vallis or a Chico who have proven themselves in government?
Or Gary Johnson.
Dan?
They've made some unorthodox calls, but this one was right in their wheelhouse.
Right.
If you
How
look,
could they
even with
not?
Rich Daley, they were very, very supportive of him.
Right.
Even in the middle of the scandals in his administration in 05, 06, when he was running again in 07, there were hardly any questions from them about the corruption scandal in his administration.
I'm surprised that what surprised me was I thought they might be heading towards Vallis. And so a question I ask of everybody, because he was one of the first in. Was he the first in, or he was one of the first two in, I believe, in the race? And this was when he was running against Rahm Emanuel. He's hovering, at 2%? And it's a name that's been around a long time. And I think that probably when he saw that Tribune endorsement, his heart just sunk, because he probably, maybe in his dreams, thought he was going to get it. And he does not seem to have an ability to raise significant money, although he's finally on television.
Or is
What-
he? He recorded a commercial and he
But it's not
announced
on
it. Not that I know of. I think
Okay.
it might not be till the last week. You look at his campaign finance reports; it doesn't buy a lot of airtime.
Is that one of the big surprises in this, or am I the only one surprised by his lack of at least showing in the polls?
We all remember him, but he's been gone for a long time for the average person, and he's been all over the place. He's been in Philadelphia, New Orleans. He's been in more spots than a rock band that's on tour. Connecticut.
Ran
It's
for
not-
lieutenant governor.
Yeah, I'm not going to say that he is. Well, he did run for lieutenant governor, but they lost.
Right.
He and Pat Quinn, and he had another job while he was running for lieutenant governor. So, how much has he been out there? Very little compared to the free media that he got in the mid '90s to early aughts when he ran for governor, and I think that's being reflected in his poor poll numbers and poor fundraising.
I think with the problem that he had was Daley, obviously. As soon as Daley got into the race, Daley sucked the media attention away and sucked the fundraising dollars away. If he had had a shot, despite the fact that he'd been gone a long time, that's when it disappeared, and he's never been able to recover since.
And Chico, is Chico is he roadkill because of Ed Burke?
I don't
this
think
moment?
so.
You still give him a good chance to be in the runoff?
Well, 20% undecided, sure.
Yeah.
I think we don't know what Latino voters, we don't know where they're going. It could be that he might benefit from that. Susana Mendoza might benefit from that. So I think, sure, he's still in it. He's in that top 5, right?
Right.
Yeah, he's got a shot, but yeah, of course, I think if you look at the candidates who are hurt the most by the Burke corruption scandal, it's probably Toni Preckwinkle, because she's the only one who is referenced in the charging document, in the federal court file on the Burke case. And that's probably more than a little unfortunate on her part, because really going back many years when she was in the city council wasn't particularly close with Ed Burke. You would certainly say that Susana Mendoza, Gary Chico going back decades with Ed Burke, being endorsed by Ed Burke in this campaign and in 2011 when he ran. There's people that are closer, like Gary Chico, but I don't think that it's a fatal blow because so many of them are connected. They talk about the Burke Four.
Yeah, well, but
back to your-
getting married in Ed Burke's home, it seems to me that demonstrates you're pretty close when his wife is marrying you.
But the
That's
whole Burke
Susana
issue,
Mendoza.
the whole Burke issue, though, has, I think, impacted in roughly equal terms Preckwinkle, Mendoza, Chico, maybe Daley a little bit, but probably not much.
And I think
Yeah,
Tony
I don't
is,
think Daley too much because
No.
But the other three for sure.
Close.
But
But the
for
other
sure.
3 for sure.
Right.
and Preckwinkle hurt the most because she lied about it. You can't say, oh, I don't know him. He just gave me $110,000, but I really don't know him. But you see, it's his
Oh, and
wife.
by the way, I hired your
by the-
son for $100,000.
Yeah, so I really
That's
don't
what-
know
that's
this.
the killer to
And
me.
it was his wife. You implicated her in her judicial role. She can't endorse anybody. She can't do fundraisers. So what the hell, Tony? What are you really doing here? I mean, make up your mind. What are you doing?
We're talking Chicago politics. I'm Bruce Dumont. Thanks for joining us.
Flintstones, meet the Flintstones, they're the modern Sonic family. From the town of Fairfield, meet George Jetson. His boy Elroy.
With instant acceleration, electric cars are more fun to drive and more affordable than ever. Electric cars are here. Plug in to the present.
Honey, what's the best vacation we've ever had?
This one.
Bradenton, Anna Maria Island, Longboat Key. Real, authentic Florida. Plan to visit online at BradentonGulfIslands.com.
Bruce Dumont back. We've got great guests, and we're going to let them introduce themselves, and we will begin with Shia Campos.
Hi, I'm Shia Kappas. I write the daily Illinois Playbook for Politico. It comes out every morning. It's a free newsletter all about everything you want to know in Chicago and statewide regarding government and politics.
Now, I get that about 6 o'clock in the morning, so how early are you up? Or when do you go to sleep?
I wake up at 4:30 in the morning every day. Mostly to make sure the world hasn't ended, because sometimes things happen and newspapers or media post stories that I might not know about. So
And you summarize every major political story, certainly in the
try to.
state of Illinois. You do a wonderful job
Thank you.
doing it. Hermine Hartman, tell us who you are.
Hermine Hartman, and I'm the publisher of Indigo, and we write about everything.
And you've been around for how many years?
We're 30 years old
30
this year.
years old. You started when you were a teenager.
I was.
Nick Com also joins us. Nick?
Yes, I'm Nick Com. I'm the founder and president of a reputation management firm called Reputation Partners here in Chicago, and a political fan and junkie for many years now.
And Dan Malopoulos. Did I get that right?
Dan Mihalopoulos. Yeah, no problem. I'm a reporter, investigative reporter on the government and politics team at WBZ, so you can hear me on 91.5 FM and also at WBZ.org.
Okay. Formerly with the Tribune, Sun-Times. You've been around here. How many years covering
Covering
politics?
politics, about 20 years.
20 years, okay.
So again, since I was a teenager.
Right. Let's spend a moment, someone who has been associated with this program for a long time. That's Amara Enya. She is one of the candidates running. The Chicago Tribune a couple of weeks ago did a significant, I would say, hit piece. Maybe it wasn't meant to be a hit piece, but it certainly came off as a hit piece, talking about her finances. And you know, Amara, you're in reputation management. When you read the story, is that a reputation that can ever be repaired?
Ever? Maybe, ever.
If she hires you.
Well, of course. I would say ever, yes, but she's going to need to demonstrate that she has her financial act together personally before she's going to be taken seriously as a candidate for anything.
Did she lose votes from her base, or did the story make it impossible for her to make inroads into other candidates'
I would say
bases?
the latter, for sure. The latter for sure, because she, despite some of the enthusiasm around the Chance the Rapper endorsement and some other signs that this could be the year of the progressive, one of the big Achilles heels for a progressive is that they don't know how to balance a budget or have the financial piece nailed down, and that just cemented it for people. So any opportunity she might have had to really take off in terms of support, that article, I think, killed it.
Are you surprised at the tone of the article and when it came out, Dan?
No, not at all. I wouldn't call it a hit piece, actually. I mean, I think it was well documented. They are a newspaper. They asked for everyone's tax returns. She was resistant for some reason. Usually it's the very rich candidates, like a Donald Trump or a Bruce Rauner, who never released his full tax returns.
Or Bill Daley.
Or Bill Daley, who hasn't in this race. Thank you very much. For a more recent example. So I think it was very well documented. You have somebody who finally released their tax returns and didn't list a significant chunk of income from the Chris Kennedy campaign, which is known. It's on the internet what everybody was paid by that campaign or any other campaign. There's full disclosure there. So her tax returns didn't match with the disclosures by the Kennedy campaign. And I think we know that that discrepancy means that perhaps she has not yet paid the taxes on a significant chunk of income. That and many other problems. Again, I thought that the most damaging part of that story may have been played down in the story, and that she once did have a job. One of her financial problems is that she apparently hasn't had many jobs. Right. And when she did have a job in public service in a south suburb, it lasted very, very briefly and left a lot of people, elected officials in that town, unhappy. And I think that that's pretty condemning when you're trying to become mayor of a city of 2.6 million people.
I think, Bruce, that they took a deep dive on her, and it's just what you do when you're running for office. Newspapers are obligated to take a deep dive and let's look at this person inside and out. So financially, she was irresponsible, okay? She wasn't completely forthright, and I think her reputation is seriously damaged. That's number one. Number two, she's very eloquent. She's not ready to be the mayor of the city of Chicago. She's too inexperienced. She hasn't run anything. She's got no successes in anything. But I think number three, Chance the Rapper, that's popularity. That is not necessarily politics. That's popularity money. Who the hell is listening to Kanye West on politics? God bless you if you are. Okay, now Chance the Rapper
can draw a crowd, though. Can write a check.
Yeah,
drawing
a crowd is not politics. Drawing a crowd. Who hustles the votes? Who does those ABC things that you have to do in order to get to the polls?
And Chance has pulled back. He was supposed to attend an
Right.
event with her earlier in the week and wasn't. Was
And
a
let's,
no-show.
and let's say who Chance the rapper's father is. That's Ken Bennett, and Ken is with
Tony Preckwinkle.
Tony Preckwinkle, formerly with Barack Obama. All of that grunt work for Barack Obama he did, and then he went to City Hall. Now, let's be real practical here. Ken is not going to let Chance the Rapper mess his reputation up and mess up his millions of dollars of earnings, fooling around with this young person here who's running. The other thing I think you have to think about.
His father's got millions of dollars of
No,
earnings?
Chance the
Okay.
rapper has.
I thought,
So it's like,
I thought
look,
we had
son,
a scoop that somebody
no,
on the county
no,
payroll was
but
making
we're,
$1
we're
million.
going to say, listen, son, let's
That'll be
not,
next week's indictment.
let's not mess it up. And I think the other thing you have to that we don't talk about with Amora is Nigerian. And do we want a Nigerian to be mayor of the city of Chicago?
Bruce,
It's a factor.
Bruce, you described it earlier, though, as a hit piece. And that's interesting, though, is that, and you were talking about Jerry Chico also before.
Yes.
And here you have him, and nobody has really written in this current election cycle about his leadership of Altimer and Gray and what happened there. Isn't it interesting that somebody that's in the high single digits could easily make the runoff, given how many people are undecided, that there's been no coverage yet, maybe it'll still come between now and Election Day, about his leadership of a law firm that basically imploded with him as managing partner.
There's also some big money that was announced today, and that is it's going in to go after Bill Daley with some of the things that he did when he was in the banking world. So that's coming out early, but let me ask this question, because things are very tight, Shia, and again, we mentioned that, you are a very important oracle of knowledge at this point, of all the times.
Would you
But
tell
in
that
the-
to my
on your
kids,
business card?
please?
you're very important in helping people decide. Those 19%, some of them may read you, some of them may read people who read you and have written other stories about it. With a short time to go, how do you guard yourself against being used by a campaign, by feeding information to you that's really going to turn out to be a hit job on somebody that they're trying to cut down?
Are you talking about campaigns feeding information to me
Yes.
as a journalist?
How do you I
Oh
want
my gosh,
to
that
ask the same
happens
thing
every
with Dan.
day. It's like every single day you're trying to sift through information, gauging whether the poll that has been given to you was conducted in a way that is worth reporting. Did they, sometimes people do polls and it's focused on the South Side and it's not with Spanish speakers, so you're leaving out a lot of people. You don't know the accuracy of it. So every day, I'm sure Dan could talk about that too. We're
And
pitch
Dan,
stories.
how do you guard against some bogus story that you're going to be fed?
Well, if it's bogus, then you don't go with it. I mean, it's just
Well,
a
you don't
matter
know
of
it at the
it's just a
beginning,
matter of checking it out. Like anything else outside of the campaign season as well. As an investigative reporter, do you have documents to back it up, or can I get documents to back it up? And if you can't, then I think it's a no-go. Everything, like we talk about the Tribune story on Amara, is a matter of public record ultimately. Whether you come across that yourself out of your own curiosity, or somebody tells you, hey, take a look over there, maybe they've pulled it up themselves with their own Oppo research people. Ultimately, it all comes down to whether it can be documented and proven or not, and then you make a judgment of whether it's germane and relevant. But at the end of the day, it's the people that read it or hear it that are going to decide how germane it is to them.
One name that's down on the list, and that's Jerry Joyce. But again, if you're watching television lately, he seems to be having a lot more television ads, as well as Gary McCarthy, also way down, I think at 3%, and he's got a lot of TV spots going on. Let's spend a moment talking about Jerry Joyce. I thought, for instance, that the reason he got in was that he really wanted to cut down Bill Daley because of a fallout between the Daleys and the Joyces. Is there more to that than what I've just stated?
I think he really wants to win. I keep calling him a stealth candidate because he has been holding a lot of behind-the-scenes, really quiet Q&As with people in neighborhoods all across the city. I I think that's interesting. It doesn't seem to be showing up on this latest poll. I don't know if it will in the, on election day. We'll have to see. But he is an interesting candidate and has a long history.
Signs.
A lot of yard signs.
Yeah, I mean, his father was Jeremiah Joyce, who's one of the great political strategists and operatives, allegedly not too much involved in this campaign, but again, it's that type of thing. It's quiet meetings that you don't hear about.
Right.
It's visibility. It's sort of old school politics. At least I've seen an example of that. I'm surprised that I've seen the television spots as frequently as I've seen them, but it's another story.
I keep telling people to watch Wheel of Fortune if you want to see all of the TV spots. They're all there, just one after the other.
And the 10 o'clock news, they don't miss. Right. They want to go where the eyeballs are. I want to talk about one more segment, and when we come back, we will talk more about Chicago politics and the race for mayor. Primary is coming up on the 26th of February. If someone does not get 50% plus one, there will be a runoff, and that's coming up in April.
If you look hard enough, go off the beaten track far enough, you'll find an America teeming with the unusual, the odd, the downright strange.
I'm Will Klinger, and I'm your guide on a package tour we like to call
Wild Travels.
Join us on our weekly road trip to see America's most offbeat and unusual attractions. Tuesday nights at 7:30 p.m. on WTTW Prime.
When CSX moves forward, so do the rest of us.
Thanks very much for joining us for this special Chicago edition of Beyond the Beltway. We're having a great conversation. Some analysts with us who are offering their thoughts and suggestions as to what might happen on February 26th. And again, a reminder, if you go to our Facebook page, Bruce Dumont at museum.tv, I'm sorry, Bruce Dumont, Beyond the Beltway with Bruce Dumont, or you go to our YouTube channel, or you go to beyondthebeltway.com, you will not only find this program, because you're watching this program there right now, but elsewhere on the same site, you're going to find interviews that we've done over the last couple of weeks with most of the candidates. Willie Wilson, Bill Daley, Bob Fioretti have been here, Lori Lightfoot. So if you want to go and get a good 15, 20-minute interview one-on-one with some of these candidates, you find out what they like, what they dislike, show sort of the personal side of them. Gary McCarthy as well. You can go to, again, right where you're watching this program right now, you can go to beyondthebeltway.com and find all of those cases. I know I was talking to Bill Daley, and I said, well, what's your favorite hot dog stand? And he said, Lucky Dog. And I said to myself, Lucky Dog? Lucky Dog is like out in Cicero somewhere. And then he said, oh, in Milwaukee and Devon. I said, you mean Super Dog? Oh yeah, Super Dog.
Oh, that's his favorite. I'm sorry.
On the way from
sorry,
the airport.
Super Dog.
No, that's all right. It's pretty good. Pretty good. My question to you is, TV spots obviously are trying to soften up those who have not yet decided. There's 19%. But in politics, it's usually the ground game. The people that knock on the doors on Election Day that go out and they physically drag people to the polls. So the question is at this moment, because you know the scene and Dan does as well, which organizations mean much? Which ones? Again, we get Coney Preckwinkle. She's the president of the Cook County Board. She's the chairman of the Democratic Party. But that doesn't mean that all 50 wards are out pulling for her, does it?
No, but she does have the CTU and unions behind her, and they have the ground game covered for her. So she's really secure that way. That's why she keeps appearing where she does on the polls. Others with the ground game.
So it's not a ward organization then?
Maybe to some extent, I
Some.
don't know. I think that it's that union support that's really going to help her. And money. That's why Daley probably has a really good ground game, and maybe he's reaching to his brother's organization if that still exists. I don't know. Susana Mendoza, I keep hearing the question is whether her ground game is strong enough, because if it is to get out Latino voters, that could be a boon for her. And then Gary Chico supposedly has a really good ground game too. So
Who is supporting these people? What organizations, Dan, do you know that are reliable, that can be counted on?
Really, since the patronage scandal of 12, 13 years ago, it took apart Richard M. Daley's machine, and took apart those large organizations like the Hispanic Democratic Organization. There really is no ward organization structure to speak of. We've seen one after another go down in their own wards. 33rd Ward, where Dick Mel, lost the committeeman's job to a young guy, a young public defender, I think it was. 47, the Fighting 47th, they couldn't hold on. It was 8 years ago. 32nd Ward went down, I think, 12 years ago now. What's left, maybe the 11th Ward, the Daley's ancestral power base, maybe a little bit of the 14th Ward, but obviously they were weakened when Ed Burke, even before he was indicted, with the changing demographics there. I have to agree with Shia.
13th Ward.
Well, of course, 13th
Speaker,
Ward,
yeah.
but who knows? He says he's not with anybody. So, and
Believe
the
that?
alderman. Well, not entirely, but maybe he's waiting till the runoff. They've got their aldermen to reelect there themselves. So I think it leaves the unions primarily with the ground game, and a lot of the bigger ones in terms of membership, service employees and CTU. The teachers are with Preckwinkle.
Nobody's really talking about the ground game, though, in connection with Daley. And I think if I were a betting man, though, Bruce, I would sit there and see, okay, I think Preckwinkle is going to make the runoff for all of the ground game reasons that you and others here have been talking about, and then somebody else, probably Daley. If I'm betting, though, I'm going to bet on whoever it is that's in the runoff with Preckwinkle as being the ultimate winner. Because Preckwinkle, we've talked about the soda tax, we've talked about all the negatives. She is not a terribly likable person. And I think what's going to end up happening is people are going to look at that binary choice, which is anything but now, and they're going to go the other way despite the ground game that exists today.
Right, it's the media game, not the ground
So
game.
it's the media game, and we got a new ground game. We got a new precinct captain. It's called Facebook.
Yes.
All right, so that's going to come into play seriously. Watch Willie Wilson's ground game. Willie's got guys on the street. You see more Willie Wilson signs all over the city, more so than anybody else. And I think you're going to have churches, and you're going to have some people that we probably don't need to talk about who will be doing things for Willie Wilson on the street.
Has he made the minister contribution?
I don't know about, well, if you can pay taxes, if you can pay the taxes, I don't know about the minister buy, but I know he's got ministers. And again, this is not new for Willie. This is not campaign stuff for Willie. This is Willie for maybe at least the last decade.
So Dorothy Brown's endorsement of Amara Enya, which surprised some people. It's not likely because she represented a sector of middle-class African Americans.
But the people who were looking at Dorothy in the church, trust me, those are not people who are looking at Amara. That's a big gap.
Okay. So right
good
now,
for Dorothy, not necessarily good for Amara.
Okay. So again, to look at to see what the 11th Ward might do. What I also heard, this gets back to Jerry Joyce, and that is that he's very solid in the 19th Ward, which was one of the big 5 wards in the history of the machine, that he's very solid there, and these inroads around the city, that's where there could be a surprise, because he could come in like a gangbuster in one ward with a lot of votes, a lot of
one
police
ward.
and firemen.
You got to have
One
the
ward.
city. You
I
got to
know.
have the
I know
city.
you do.
He doesn't have name recognition.
Okay. Well, I'm just telling you. I'm talking about the subterranean thing that's out there, and those things sometimes happen on election day in Chicago. Some things happen, we don't really know.
In Chicago,
I've
this
enjoyed our
election,
conversation.
anything could
Dan
happen.
Malopoulos from WBEZ Radio, Romaine Hartman from Indigo, Nick Com from Reputation Partners, and also Shia Campos. Thank you very much. Kappas from Illinois Playbook. Thank you all for joining us on this discussion of Chicago politics tonight on Beyond the Beltway, a special Chicago edition.
Welcome to the world, 2116. You can fly across town in minutes, or across the globe in under an hour. Whole communities are living on Mars, and solar satellites provide Earth with unlimited clean power. In less than a century, Boeing took the world from seaplanes to space planes, across the universe and beyond. And if you thought that was amazing, you just wait.
Today, fresh fruits and vegetables will go from a field in California to a grocer in Miami. A bottle of beer from Eagle Pass will journey to a restaurant in Manhattan. A 2x4 in Oregon will find its way to a townhome in Denver. A hybrid will say goodbye to Detroit and hello to a showroom in Austin. While a steel beam will leave a mill in Illinois for a high-rise in Phoenix. And a flat screen in China will head to an electronics store in Memphis. Because today, as every day, wherever you find business, you'll find us.
Live from Chicago, it's Saturday Night Live, The Experience. For the first time ever, get an inside look at the making of SNL. Over 500 artifacts direct from the show. Be a part of Wayne's World, Weekend Update, and so much more. Experience all it takes to put the show together. Now at the Museum of Broadcast Communications at 360 North State Street in Chicago. For tickets, visit museum.tv.